All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. I
Hey
hope all of
guys, how's
you
everyone?
let us know in the chat if you can hear us. Yeah, I can see some of the comments coming in already. Super cool. All right, so thank you so much for joining in. And today we have with us Dilmer, who is a developer advocate at Meta. Thank you so much, Dilmer, for taking your time and joining in today.
No, thank
So,
you.
in
Thank you for the invite,
yeah,
Ashray.
yeah. Fun fact, by the way, guys, for watching 5 years ago, I used to watch the Dilma's tutorial videos and learn from it. And I'm pretty sure there'll be so many people who are watching us today who would have watched Dilma's video and it would have helped you in some or the other way. So, Dilma, thank you again for doing these tutorials for a very long time. And in today's lecture, Dilma will be talking about the agentic workflows for VR development using AI and MCP. And he'll also be walking through of how he built a VR game and VR game prototype using some of these tools. So Dilma, the stage is yours. All of
Thank
you,
you very
please.
much, Ashray.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good to go. Hey everyone, I'm
Yes.
Dilmer. How is everybody doing? I'm a developer advocate, like Ashray mentioned, and thank you for having me. I'm pretty excited to talk about the different tools that we have for AI. Meta, we did a little bit of information about this during our GDC talk, and we talked about agentic workflow. So this is really the first time that I am talking about these tools beyond what we did at GDC, and really excited to show you how these tools work. There's some things that are really new that we haven't really shared. We talked a little bit about at GDC, so I'm gonna dive in and show you some videos, a prototype that we built for the actual talk, and also dive into how Unity AI works. So the title is accelerating VR development with agentic workflow. So the main idea for this is not really to replace art or like generate art. It's more geared towards how we can make your workflows more efficient, right? Like I want to take it from a developer standpoint where I want you to come out of this and say, okay, wow, I can actually start exponentially being more productive, right? Like no to say that we're gonna use this for Gen AI. A lot of people think it's just generating art, but it's not. It's it's code, it's shaders, it's also improving workflows, creating agents. So I'm gonna show you some of those different things today. So to start, I know many of you. I'm sure many of you like me. You're always thinking about. There's just so much AI discussions, so many different tools coming out, and it can get really overwhelming. But at the same time, you might be thinking, wow, there's all these things that I can do now with AI. Like I'm sitting here and I on a daily basis, I'm thinking I can actually start like building these things without having to hire an entire team. And me as a content creator, I see a big benefit because if I want to build a game, and I've been wanting to do it for a long time, it's always been hard to find the time and resources to do that because if you have a day job, if you have a career that you're working on. So I think AI, it's kind of like filling in that gap, and that's the beauty of a lot of these. You can still do a lot of code. You can still be effective in the tools that you're using in Unity, write things from scratch, but also take advantage of using some of these tools. So I've been ideating a lot about games and apps that I want to build, and I hope that you get inspired by this talk and also start doing that and taking advantage of the tools that I'm gonna show you today. So just to start, this is the agenda for today. So we're gonna go through agentic workflows in VR. What does actually that mean? What are some of the Unity AI offerings? This was already covered by Unity at the GDC talk, but I'm gonna be filling in that gap today. And then Meta's Unity MCP extensions, what are those? How do they work? Where can you go in and find them? Also, MCP and Horizon OS updates. I'm going to show you some of the new CLI tools that we have and that you can actually use during the hackathon, right? Like I think all of these is not just for you to ideate, but take advantage of these tools and as you're working with teams and you guys work together on the projects. I think that's where this is going to come in handy, is just use these resources as you guys work on ideas, you assemble teams, and then you build your projects. And then I'll do a live demo. I'll try to make it through that, I'll show you some of the results from something that I'm going to be building today. And then, so what are agentic workflows in VR? And like I said, I think the main idea is really not to replace an art guy or a VFX person or a programmer, but to basically be able to ship faster. We want you to have the power of the tools, of Unity, of your code, your architecture, but also take advantage of using something like Cloud Code with Unity MCP, and not only on a copilot fashion where you're generating code. Now, this is actually, as you can see on this video, this is actually interacting with the Unity scene, which is where the MCP power comes from. And there are multiple MCPs available right now. There's Coplay, which I've used in the past. There's also the Unity AI Assistant, which is one that I've been using recently. And then I'm using Cloud Code, but you can also use different IDs. So these examples show you a demo that I built for GDC. I wanted to combine Beat Saber also with a bowling pool mechanic that I built for another prototype in the past, and also add like shaders that look cool. So I was able to do a lot in about 3 to 6 hours when I was putting this together, versus the GDC demo that I built in the past, which I think it took me like 2 to 3 weeks to build. So that on its own, it's a huge benefit, right? Because now you can build projects that are much faster, and you're using your time more efficiently and thinking about building, and not too much about like all the details that that you have to take into account when you're coding some of these projects. So ship faster, stay in the flow, and then agentic workflows is what we're going to be using to do that. So there are a variety of different tools that we have available right now. Some of them that I haven't used as much, but I really want you to start looking into them. The one that we just released is this HZDB, and it's basically a wrapper it has a wrapper around ADB tools. So if you guys use the ADB tools in Android to connect to a device to see what devices are connected, there's also a component around that. There's also tools that allow you to get performance information by using this tool and executing it from the command line. So this is a CLI tool. And then the other part that is big about this is that it comes with an MCP server. So if you wanted to basically spawn an MCP server that has information about Meta and some of the different VR components, you could basically wire this up or execute it through the command line, and it's going to give you information from our documentation, information from, if you wanted to connect it to also VS Code, it's also available as a VS Code extension. The Agentic Tools repo is something that we also announced at GDC. I haven't really looked into it until this morning, and it's really cool because it has a variety of different skills that you can start using. So let's say that you wanted to create a WebXR application, but you didn't really want to have Claude have to go through all documentation and find out what the project structure is, what the patterns are. There are different skills in here that allow you to do that. Also, how to interact with Unity, how to create XR projects. So I recommend you to look at that. And then there's also an independent HZDB binary that we also have available in NPM. And that's important if you wanted to use that for continuous integration. Like if you have a bigger team and you want to have automatic deployment set up, then you can basically have that added to that workflow. So a lot of different tools, but the end results of all these tools is just thinking about how you can take advantage of agentic workflows by using some of the tools that we are providing. So what agentic workflows mean, some connection problems here. Okay, so it looks like we got disconnected here. So we should be good now. So what does agentic workflow mean for VR? And this is what I was mentioning. If you wanted to interact with Unity, have Unity understand some of the VR components that we provide as part of the Meta SDK. I'm going to show you today, like I show you on this image, this has hand tracking features available. And there's a lot of different features incorporated into this demo that was built with AI. There is, in the past, it used to be very complex, and I always go back to my example of, remember Oculus integration, for those of you who are OGs of VR development, it used to be that you had to grab a folder and put them into Unity. And then we went from that to actually providing you building blocks where you can drag and drop different components. And now we're talking about using agentic workflows where you're interacting with an agent, and then that agent has knowledge to be able to interact with the SDKs that we provide, not only Meta SDKs, but different components that Unity also provides, such as creating M objects, creating scriptable objects, actually creating scripts as well, communicating with APIs, and so on. So I'm going to show you what is available. Also, what is ahead for agentic workflow? This is something that we also talked about, and we're currently working on building a new Meta AI developer assistant that is going to be available on our portal. So right now, you could interact with the MCPs by using either the Meta Quest Developer Hub, using your IDE that has the HZDB enabled, and be able to basically consume documentation from our Meta portal. But what's ahead is that we're working on Meta AI Developer Assistant that is also going to provide you with a lot of that information. So this will be a chat on the development portal that you'll be able to access as well. So I talked about using CodePlay, right? In CodePlay, it's basically an open source project. They have a paid version and also a free version that you can use also to interact with Unity from an agentic type workflow. Unity also has one which is called the Unity AI Assistant. That's what the package is behind the scenes. And they also provide something similar that is more glue into Unity. It's more integrated. It has its own chat window. And I'll show you how that works. You can also expose different agents. So if you wanted to use Cloud Code or if you wanted to use Cursor, that is also available in there. So let me just show you what the Unity Assistant and AI Gateway are. So here's an example of how the Unity AI Assistant works. So it's basically your chat window, right? And you can ask it to, in this case, they're changing the lighting conditions of this environment, but it knows about the scene, it knows about the hierarchy. And then the problem was, can you actually change the light settings? And now you can see that the scene is actually changing. You can see here, change the scene lighting to be pale, desaturated purple, and then it goes through the scene. But if you notice on the bottom left, this is right now using Unity. And what that means is basically using the Unity LLM. So you can use Cloud Code, you can use additional different LLMs that are also available through the settings, which I'll show you today. But yeah, you have end-to-end control, confident UI creation, so it can actually work with canvases, set up the layout. It knows different information about Unity. So the AI Gateway also works with the AI Assistant. You can see here that in this case, we're actually setting up a Cloud Code. And that's the beauty about the gateway, is you can also use additional agents. In my case, I normally use Cloud Code for most of my work. So you can also do that and also expose different models that you can use for AI. And if you look at the assistant options in Gateway, here's where we can designate if we want to use Cursor, if we want to use Gemini, Codex, and so on. So here's an example also how we would go about asking a question by using the AI system. You can test ideas, debug issues. So I think the biggest takeaway from using something like this is you can iterate a lot faster, right? You don't have to figure out how to implement a specific feature. You can use the AI system to do that for you. And then I always recommend using Git and then keeping track of some of those changes so you can understand your project. The other thing that we also show at GDC was not only this works with code or with Unity components, but you can also use it for performance optimization. So if your game wasn't running fast enough, the FPS was basically too low, or you had basically issues with performance in your game, then you can also use the assistant And this is all integrated into Unity. So that's like one of the advantages of using the Unity AI offering, is because it's more glued into what Unity provides. So yeah, analyzes profile data, easier to find bottlenecks. As you guys can see here, that the AI, it's helping in finding out why this is running so slow. So you can see some of the frame rates, allocations, and then it's all integrated into it. And then get suggested optimizations. With this reminds me of the runtime optimizer, which is something that we provide as well as part of the SDKs. But instead of using that, you can also use this, and then you have that additional tool that you can use for VR optimization. So like I showed you before, these can actually work with editor tooling, with Unity. One of the advantages of this, and I personally use editor tooling a lot when I was implementing a VR prototype. Editor tooling, it's something that it takes a lot of work, right? If you're implementing custom tools for your games, like in this case, it's creating like procedural changes on this plan. Those things take time from developers. Like you have to implement those tools. So you can also use these AI tools to be able to help you with some of the tooling that you might need. So manages UI creation, so it knows about the underlying editor architecture in order for the actual AI to implement those tools. So like it says right here, understand Unity internal workings. And I'm sure like you've gone through that, and you're always, anytime you want to implement an editor tool, it's like, okay, what the Unity change? What do I need to do now? It's always been a challenge, right? Or you can use some of the asset store items to be able to implement more advanced custom tooling. So yeah, so they provide checkpoints, annotations in generation, QA agents, MCP server and clients, templates and skills, and there's a whole set of Gen AI as it relates to sprites, 3D models that you guys can actually look into. And we'll be dropping the information on how to look at the Unity AI documentation. Okay, so that's Unity and what they offer right now. And just FYI, they're currently in beta, so you'll have to go to that link and then request access. If you use the Codeplay solution that's already available, you can access it through to GitHub and then also download it right away. So what are Meta Unity MCP extensions? So think about the Unity MCP or the Codeplay MCP as having understanding about your Unity scene. But what about different understanding on some of our core components? Let's say you want to implement hand tracking. Let's say that you want to add controller tracking to your experience, or maybe shaders that need to basically render on both eyes of your MetaQuest, which basically is using a stereo, and that adds more complexity to shader creation. So that's when this comes in, is when we basically expose additional functionality that the MCP can understand. And I'm going to show you what those are. So this is a basic demo that I created. I started with a basic idea, and I'm like, okay, I need to get a VR project ready before just something basically a boilerplate that I could use. And then this basically shows you what you would need to do to install it. You need to install the Unity AI Gateway, or Meta MCP extensions require that you have the Meta XR Core SDK, which makes sense if you're developing for VR. That's going to be the SDK that is needed. We also require that you have Meta XR Interaction SDK. And the reason for that is because these components here, the Unity MCP extensions, have different calls that allow you to basically add hand tracking, add grabbables, and in some of those different extensions require the XR Interaction SDK as a dependency. So you guys can go here, basically install the Unity AI Gateway from the Unity documentation, then install the github.com, MetaQuest, Unity MCP extensions, and that's going to give you additional extensions that you can use with Cloud Code, that you can use with Unity AI. So you can see here, this is basically just adding a camera rig, getting or scene ready with hand tracking, and also controller tracking. So Now, when you connect to Unity by using the MCP, let's say that in my case, I'm using Cloud Code, and that's because I prefer to do that. But if we were using VS Code or you were using Writer or Cursor, you're also going to get a prompt where you have to accept the cloud connection. So that's what it's going to show you here. If you go into player settings, you're going to see the status that is running, some of the different methods that are available, and then also the connections, whether you want to accept it or whether you had accepted them or you have not accepted them. And this shows you how you would add the Unity MCP through your cloud code. And some of these methods are the ones that I just mentioned. If you wanted to add a camera rig, if you wanted to add a grabbable. And remember, this used to be complex. You had to go through packages, prefabs, trying to find out where things are was always complicated. At least it was for me. And then also trying to find out what components go into game objects. Like if you wanted to implement a camera rig, okay, what different scripts do we need to associate with that? So you don't need that anymore. You can just access these different extensions by using Cloud Code. So here's another screenshot of what it looks like. This shows you where the connection is coming from, and then also what this application is going to have access to. So execute Unity editor commands, modify scenes and game objects. So yeah, you wouldn't want to accept something that has more access than is needed. So you can revoke here or accept it depending on your situation. So if we go, okay, so now if we go forward, is the previous slide show you basically how to create a VR project that has a camera rig, it has controller and hand tracking support, but it doesn't, that's really everything that it does. So I wanted to add more components, and this should show you here that if you wanted to do a one by one type prompt, you could do it by what I showed you on the previous slides. But you can also do something more complex, right? You can say add an interaction rig, and this interaction rig allows you to do things like locomotion. It has hands, controllers, and it's a more advanced rig. And I also want to add a grabbable object so that I can test the scenes. I told it to basically make it 10%. And the reason for that is because we're dealing with VR in physical coordinates or measurements. So 10%, if we're dealing with meters, is going to be about the size of what a cube will look like in real world. And then I also can activate the simulator, and I can also play the Unity scene. So you not only can add components that are available from our SDKs, but you can also activate or interact with different objects or different menus within Unity, which is what this is showing you right now. You can see here we have the complex rig. We have a cube that was spawned, and it's also basically executing, activating, and launching the XR simulator and playing the Unity scene, which therefore is what opens the XR sim. And then, like I said before, here are the individual prompts. If you didn't want to add everything at once, so you didn't need to activate the XR simulator, you could just do the 3 different prompts. And then, so now that we have a VR project that is ready, which is what I said on the previous slides, what if you wanted to work on something more realistic, right? Like an actual game or a game idea. So this is what I came up with when I was working on the GDC demo. Is at first I was like, okay, I'm gonna tell it to create the whole thing in just one prompt. And that might work, but I wanted to have some kind of control over what AI was gonna do. I also got GitHub Git on a different command prompt. And as I was testing different ideas, I was deciding what I wanted to go to a branch, what I wanted to commit, what I wanted to push. But the idea of this is not just to tell AI to do everything for you. I've seen a lot of people do that, where they're doing vibe code, and I'm glad that works for them. But as a developer, I think I want to have more control, right? If we want to build something more scalable, I think starting from a feature, an MVP, and then working your way up makes a lot more sense. So this is kind of my flow. It's what is the game idea or game mechanic idea? I would say more of a feature-based approach than the prompt design. What is it that you really need to create? And I'm going to show you some examples of this. And then reviewing the plan preview. So Cloud Code gives you a plan preview of everything that it's going to do. Sometimes it's a lot and sometimes it's overwhelming. So that's what I always go back to, just thinking about doing a feature-based approach. That way you have more control of what it's doing. And then, yeah, lots of iteration. It's not going to get it right the first time. I'm going to show you an example where I did a shader that looked cool, but it didn't work well. And what did I do to fix it? So here's an example of how I started. I wanted to implement, I knew what I wanted to do, which was a game that I'm going to show you here in a few minutes. I knew that I needed a ball that I wanted to pull, and basically once I pull it, depending on how far I go, that will determine how basically the speed, the velocity of the ball. So I did that for a bowling game that I created for the YouTube channel about a year and a half ago. And that's what I wanted to do. So here's basically the prompt: build a MetaQuest hand tracking pull ball mechanic, detect a thumb index pinch, spawn a ball at the pinch point, and keep it attached while pinching. And then while you hold it, let the user pull back to the opposite. So I basically told it what I wanted to do, and this is the code that got generated. And it's more controllable, right? You can see that I have a skybox, I have hand tracking, and I have just a basic sphere. And then I knew what it was doing. So then I could check the code, make sure that I iterate until, and go through it until I understood it. And then once I was happy with it, I would move on to the next feature. So you can see the results here. So like I showed you on the previous slide, we didn't have all these cool looking shaders on it. So I wanted to add more features to what I created on the previous slide. And the reason for that is because I went to watch a Trump movie, and I really got inspired from the look and feel of that movie. And that's why I decided to do shaders like this. So I said, can you add a futuristic glowing shader to the ball? And as I pull it back, have a transition basically from one color to another. And when I did it worked on the Unity editor, but it didn't work when I deployed to Quests. Again, so that's one thing that I wouldn't have found out if I wasn't doing basically an iterative approach, where I could just test specific features, put the headset on, make sure that it works before I move on to creating a full big game. So I found out that it wasn't working. Then I told it, why is the material rendering in only one eye when running on the MetaQuest device? And if you're a shader expert or you work with shaders on VR, you know that if you want to render on both eyes, there's additional shader parameters, configuration that you have to do, and when implementing a shader for VR. So I basically did that, and then shaders were working correctly on the Quest. And I only told it to create a futuristic and glowing shader to the ball. I didn't tell it to basically parameterize all of this. And you can see that I got a glow color, I got a glow intensity, fractional values, and then pulsation. So it added more than I asked it to do, which I actually like it what it did. And then I move on. But if you want it to be more granular, I think this prompt will have to be more detailed. And then you can specify exactly what you're looking for. So I kept it a little wide open so that AI could do its best to provide what I asked it for. So you can see here this is an example of the shader and what needed to be added when I told it it wasn't working on the MetaQuest. It says that it needed to add 5 lines, it needed to do multi-compile instancing, and it needed to add instancing options, render and layer, basically all of these to be able to render correctly on a stereo type device, such as a MetaQuest. And then it applied, I review it, it looked good to me, and then I move on. But these are basically the sections. So yeah, so this is required for single pass instance stereo rendering. And if you've gone through shader creation in the past and go through the Unity documentation, you probably will be like me, like you found it pretty complex, or maybe you learn it and that's great. But in my case, this was a really huge win where I could focus on C#, the things that I know best, and then I could let AI focus on things that I wasn't really too excited about, but I knew that I could add more polish into a game. Okay, so now I did build a very simple pull ball mechanic, and I wanted to add more of a gameplay, right? More of a game loop. So I said, we're turning this VR prototype into a full game. To do so, spawn multiple rings. So basically, this is like a Beat Saber type game where objects are coming at you and there's something that you need to do to be able to destroy it. So I didn't really want to do a sword because that's like every Hello World that I've done has been Beat Saber. But instead, could actually just do a different mechanic and use hand tracking to do that. So that's basically what I told it to do, just spawn different objects. And I said rings because I wanted objects that were procedural created. I didn't want to have to create assets. And I like a minimalistic UI style. So basically I specify that. And I'm going to share here the results. So this is cloud code. This is the code that got generated. This is basically the whole plan that I was talking to you about. You can see the rings got generated. These are all procedural. You can change the shapes. I also told it to create the kind of an environment that had that Tron look and feel, and that was a differentiator. You can see here the results of this is the first iteration after having just the pull mechanic. Okay, pretty simple, but the UI is pretty simple, the pull mechanic, but there's a lot of stuff that it did. In just a matter of, I would say 30 to 1 hour, I had something like this ready to go. So I started iterating through this, and it didn't look exactly like that at the beginning. I just went through and say, okay, can you apply a trailing effect that looks like the reference images? Also draw a line render from the pinch. And I'm going to show you that not only you can specify a prompt via text, but you can also add reference images from prototypes that you built in the past. And that's what I did. Like, this is something that I built in the past for Meta, before working for Meta. And this was when the Presence platform was announced. They wanted to build more tabletop type games. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to make a bowling game that basically will sit on top of a table and I could play with anytime I needed it. But you can see that it has array. It has a similar look and feel of what I added to this game. And then what it happened is it took the reference image, it took the prompt information, and this is what it generated. It wasn't exactly like this, but it generated something like it, which was really cool because I didn't have to code it from scratch. Then I also wanted to test things with the Meta XR simulator. So when I started with this, I had it working with hand tracking, but I also wanted to have it working with controllers. And then I also wanted to do multimodal, which is those things. This is where you can use controllers and hands at the same time. My ideas just started like just going crazy. I just couldn't stop generating prompts. But for the Meta XR simulator, I wanted controllers just to be able to also use controllers on the experience, but also be able to test it. I didn't know hand tracking work on Meta XR Sim, so I'm like, oh, I need to add controller tracking. That was the main reason. Then I found out that you can now use both. But you can see here that I was able to test a MetaLink requirement, tested on MetaLink by using the headset, and I was also able to test this on the simulator after I executed the prompt that added controller support. And yep. So ideas started basically coming, and I started adding more features, right? So I think I stayed up really late because everything was working. And the reason for that is because I kept it very feature. I was doing a commit. Basically, for every small feature, I was committing my code, I was pushing my code, and then, okay, I'm going to test something else. If it doesn't work, I can just do a reset and then go back in time. And then that process worked really well. I did multimodal support. I added an audio manager because I like things that have like music and sound. It just makes the experience a lot more exciting. And then I also wanted to make sure that the UI looked better. So you can see here, change the miss. At the beginning, it was just basically a label, 0 out of 10, for any time that I would miss one of the objects that were coming at me. And then I told it to basically do sort of a progress bar. It looked better. I also added explosion effects. I didn't want to use VFX. I just told it to basically use mini cubes that will basically explode as each object will get destroyed. So you can see here my prompt, add an explosion of mini cubes around the rings. Anytime we hit one through the middle and the score increments, allow the user to specify. I even have typos and was able to fix it. Allow the user to specify the force and the cubes dissipate. It doesn't need to be a perfect prompt, at least it needs to be understandable. And then, yeah, and then I added a lot of different other features, and you're gonna see here these results. All right, but that is the idea. You probably seen it if you watch some of the stuff that I posted. I was pretty happy with the results, and that inspired me to make a variety of different games that I'm currently working on. And I think that's like what I want you to go through is start testing some of these tools, play with the prompts, see what you can do, and then to me, like now that I created these, now I can create something a lot more polished, or maybe a lot bigger, or ideas that I haven't been able to implement in the past because I didn't have these features before. But yeah, so this is the consolidation of all the different prompts that I show you before. So that's the VR prototype, and I'm sure I'm sure that you can create a lot cooler stuff. That's just one of the demos that I built. This other tool though is called Immersive debugger, and this is something that I've been covering over the past few years on the channel. And what it allows you to do is, I'm sure like if you're developing today, or if you've done it for a while, you always have been able to, or basically create custom, you create custom logs depending on where you want to, what you want to basically troubleshoot in your code. So this allows you to, so let me just go back. So let's say that you're debugging a tool that you develop for VR, and you want to see what happens within your different classes. And a lot of times developers go in and basically they just they add a lot of log entries. That's something that I've done in the past. So with Immersive Debugger, we simplify that. Instead of you having to create a custom canvas every single time, we provide you with Immersive Debugger, where you can just add a script to a component in Unity, and then that component now is exposed through an inspector that runs a runtime. So if you put the headset on, you're going to be able to see some of the object properties. You're going to be able to modify some of those properties. So that was the state of this before AI. So now with AI, and this is something that is coming up, you can basically tell Immersive Debugger via BOS to make fixes at runtime. This is really cool because sometimes you're wearing the headset, you don't want to have to figure it out, go into Unity, try to find out what happened. With voice, you can tell it, okay, in this case, there's one of the interactables here, it's not working correctly. So the prompt is like, can you actually check why it's not working? And can you fix it? It goes through, it applies those fixes. So if we were running this with MetaLink, you could see the changes, maybe copy the hierarchy, and then save it out so that you can have it available when you basically hit stop in Unity and it's not running anymore. So this is another feature that I recommend you to keep an eye on. You can use it today. The AI features are coming in a future version. All right, I talk quite a bit. So now Horizon OS agentic tooling. So I talked to you about how some of these different agentic workflows, so whether you're using Cloud Code, whether you're using Unity, this needs information from somewhere, right? Like it needs to know, okay, it could go to our web pages and basically scrape it, and that's normally what a lot of these AI tools do. But instead of doing that, we're providing more friendly documentation. So in this case, if you look at the URL here, you can actually access some of this documentation, which is in Markdown, and it's structured in a way that works well for all of these different agentic workflows. And that's currently already available for all building paths. And then it also has a sitemap, LLMS.tx that sits at the root of our documentation. And then there's also MD versions of the entire documentation that are available for all these agents. So the next thing that I don't know a lot of people know is using the MetaQuest Developer Hub. There is, I would say it's kind of a hidden tool, but it's under settings. And then if you go to AI tools, you can use, if you use VS Code, it's pretty easy because you can click on it and then it'll add basically an MCP that you can access. And that MCP is going to give you access to basically if you want to detect whether your Quest device is connected, you want to get logs from your Quest, you want to get information from our Unity documentation. There's a lot of different MCP resources available to you. So I would recommend you to look into this. And then the next thing that I was going to do is was going to basically show you a live demo of how Unity AI works, what you can do, and also what I did with CoPlay. All right, let me go ahead and I think we're good with time. So I show you the videos of some of the results from this project. And this project was fully built by using CoPlay. I also converted it to work with Unity AI Assistant, but in this case, I got this running with CoPlay. And the way that it works though is you have, like if you go, I got the MCP server here running. I also have Cloud Code running and connecting to, basically connected to this MCP. And what it is basically just, it's exposing a URL and an MCP. And this MCP has a set of actions and tools that are available. So if you go here to Window and then Tools and toggle the MCP window, I can show you some of the different settings. So once you download CoPlay, you're going to get basically this, and it's not going to be running. You got to start the server. There's going to be some additional dependencies. I think you need something called UV. You also need a certain version of Python to get this running. But the beauty of this is going to be here under Tools. So this is going to tell you what it can do. So built-in tools, it can execute a menu item. You can also toggle these ones on and off depending on what you need. If you wanted to manage animations, manage different components in the scene, you can do that. Manage, basically capture a screenshot. That's something that AI does a lot. It takes screenshots of the results, and then it tries to make sense of what it did, and it fits itself. So it could be token hungry, to be honest. So I think that's when prompt design experience comes in handy. And then it can manage and create scripts and so on. The tools that I'm really want to focus on are going to be like, what are the tools that we provide at Meta, right? Like that are specifically for VR. So if you wanted to add a camera rig, if you wanted to add a canvas that has interactions such as poke, these are things that take quite a bit of work trying to find out what scene in interaction SDK is available so that I can copy different components. So we're going to be providing a lot more of these, but this is a starting point. Like if we wanted to add a grabbable, here is a tool that you can actually use through Cloud to add a grabbable as well. And then if you wanted to add an interaction rig and so on, and also even update Android manifest. So that's something else that I think is also pretty helpful and tedious because you don't want to have to modify something that then breaks your deployment. And then, yeah, and there's different resources, scripts, and yeah, I recommend you to check this out. So if I go let me go back into the command line here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this here so you guys can see how things will execute. But something as simple that once you have this running, so there's an MCP command here. You can see that the Unity MCP is currently running. I can also look at different tools that this currently has available. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say something like, can you tell me what objects do I have in my hierarchy? Something like that, just to get us up and running. And it might use earn tools that are available with Meta, or it might use tools that are available with the Unity MCP. And you can see that it's right now it found, Unity MCP is the one that I need to call. It's going to say, okay, find game objects by component, and it has all these different parameters that are already specified. And let me go ahead and make this a little smaller. And the reason why I have this here is because I want to show you this is making a call. There we go. So it's making calls every time this is executing. And this is what's helpful, right? Like this is a very simple command because I just wanted you to see it working. But you can see your scene has these many game objects in total. Here are the 3 root level objects. I have a main camera, directional light, an OVR camera rig, and then it has all these different components. So which happens to be like this scene. But if I wanted to do something like, let's go ahead and create a new scene. I'm gonna show you here, go into scene, and then we can just say AI test, and then I'll just go ahead and double click it. And what I'm gonna say is I'm gonna say, can you create or can you add an interactable rig that works for VR? And let's see what it does. And so it's gonna try to look and see what tools it has available as part of the Unity MCP. And then it looks like it's trying to read the console just to see what happened. It actually found the OVR comprehensive rig wizard, and then normally it doesn't do this. In this case, it did do that. And then it allowed me to create a comprehensive rig. And then I can go in here and look at. So another thing that it can also do, let's see, we can just say yes, because it needs to read the console to find out if there are any issues. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to say, can you actually add a grabbable object? So we can start here. Can you add a grabbable object that is positioned in front of the camera about, we can say about 1 meter away, and it is scaled to 10%. 10%, something like that. Let's see. Live demos don't normally work the first time, so we'll see if this actually works. Okay, so it looks like it's trying to find objects by name and read MCP resource. Okay, I think it's doing its job. And then for some reason, it's trying to execute all these different grab interactions. And we can say rigid body, and we can just say go ahead and fix it. And I think it's because we added this comprehensive rig, which has all these different wizards. And you can see that now, okay, we have the grab component. Let's see what it's doing. Well, we don't have the grab component. We have the objects that are required in order for us to grab a component, which in this case is this hand grab interaction. There's a grab interactable. So a lot of these used to be manual. Okay, so now Unity MCP, it's gonna, okay. So now that we have the components, the actual interactors, now we need to add the interactables, right? So I'm gonna say, yep, go ahead and I trust you to do what you need to do to make this work. So it's gonna create a cube that is grabbable. And we'll see here. And it's going to add different components. So yeah, go ahead and add, it's trying to add a rigid body. Okay, go ahead and do it. And a lot of those warnings, you can basically tell it to bypass by going through the player settings and then MCP configuration. There are some options in there. There's also a flag that you can provide to cloud, which is not safe to do, but once you feel comfortable with it, you can decide which options you want to be warned about and which you don't. And it looks like it's still going through here. So it cooked for 1 minute. The cube is now fully interactable. Oh yeah, it did it. So it's because this was the active window. Now it's in here. And then we have it basically right in front of, is that right? Yep, it's 1 meter away, and it is scale at 10%. Okay, so last thing that I'm gonna do is, could you activate Meta XR Simulator and also play the Unity scene? Okay, so we're gonna say activate, and I know that it needs to be activated. If you say enable, it might not do the proper thing. So that's when experience comes in. I know that it's basically called activate through the menu items, and that's an option that you can access through Meta tools. And hopefully this is gonna, okay, yep, I can see the simulator here opening up. And let me see if it works. And we have, well, we have a basically fully working. I don't see the cube, and I think that's because there's a rigid body component, so it might be falling with gravity. And we can see here that I can basically, I have a fully working rig, and I can move around. And you can also go here and like if you wanted to see different settings of what's happening with some of these objects, such as the left controller and right controller, you can enable those. Let's actually go ahead and go back into this. And then you can see here that this is a rigid body and it's not kinematic, so we could tell it to make it. Okay, so we can say something like, what I'm going to do just for now is I'm just going to go ahead and make it kinematic, because I think I'm going to run out of time if we keep playing with this. But I'm just going to go ahead and make it kinematic, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit play. I think the simulator is still active. And we can see it here. And it's opening up. And we'll wait here for these to render. And now we have, yep. So now we have the cube. I mean, it's not super complicated, it's something crazy, but you can see, oh, let me go ahead and grab it. I think I can hit G to grab it. No. And looks like it's not currently allowing me to drag it for some reason. And it might be because it is kinematic. So let's try this. I can seem to make it kinematic, which I did manually. Can you fix it? Okay, let's see if we can use AI to fix our problem here. And just by looking at this, we have a grabbable, we have a grab interactable. And I think some of these different components in here might not be set up correctly because it needs a rigid body pointable element. Okay, so let's see if it's able to fix itself. Okay, manage components, set property. Okay. Just making it grabbable. Okay. Error setting, properties for components, grab interactable. So that tells me that the grab interactable here doesn't have the appropriate component set. So it's gonna try to read it. It's gonna get all the different information from it. And some of you might be thinking, Dilmer, but this is just a simple grab interactable. And that's where like you go through these and then try to find a pattern, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Okay, and then these changes fix, I've updated the grabbable. Okay, let's see if it actually did that. And I don't think it actually did it, but it tells you here. So I set it to is kinematic equal false, rigid body is linked. The grabbable rigid body is linked to a rigid body component, which it is now. The grab interval physics grabbable is linked to the grabbable component, is it? And let me just make sure. Okay, and it says grab interactable physics grabbable. It's linked to, okay, so I don't think it is, but we're gonna make it grab. So I think this is obsolete, and then this is optional. Okay, let's go ahead and hit play. And then we're gonna try, if this doesn't work, I'm gonna show you the other working project that has already gone through this. It's actually this project, just a different scene. Okay, so we have it running, and looks like our cube actually failed, which is kinematic, was not set. So I'm just gonna go ahead and set it, and then hit play. Okay, just give it a minute here. And then we have the window here. And I can, why is it resetting like that? And for some reason, it's not working. All right, so what I'm gonna do is just go into building blocks and then grabbables. And you can see that I have here, there's a grab interaction that we can add. And what I wanted to do is just check the settings on this component. And you can see that this only has a grabbable component. And then if I go to the hand grab, it has a pointable element. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and uncheck this just to see if it's something that is not set up correctly on the grabbable. Let's put it right at 1 there, and then maybe about 1 there. Okay, I'm going to hit play. And this is the beauty about doing a live demo. Let's wait for it. We do have an error. Oh, looks like the error cleared out. And then, okay. Okay, so it's definitely not the cube itself, because I think, oh yeah, so it is working. So it is something with the grabbable object that wasn't set up correctly. So let's go ahead and figure it out. So we could go here, go through and then find out, tell AI why it's not working, and it'll fix itself at some point. But I can see here, like this has, so I think all of this looks correct to me. The part that doesn't look correct to me is the pointable element and then the rigid body. Everything else looks fine. Okay, so let's try to populate those. So I think this part is missing, and then this part is missing. Then I'll just go ahead and delete that one that I use as a reference, and then I think its kinematics is still set. And let's just wait for this to finish launching. And we can tell AI to pull it out, but for now I'm just gonna do it manually. And let's see if we can. Yep, and that was the issue. So I could have taken a screenshot of that component and maybe the other component and say, hey, this is not working, it'll fix itself. So that wasn't a really nice demo, but you get the idea of some of the features, how to fix different things. But let me show you the final thing that I wanted to show you. So this is the actual final demo that I show you as a prototype on the video that when I was presenting. So if you look at it, this has basically everything here was created by using AI. We have the OVR camera rig, which was created by using some of the Unity MCP components. We also have different obstacles and spanners. So if I go here, you can see that these ones, so there's a lot of things in here. There's a ring mesh generator that generates different, so I could go here and basically change the depth. I can change the segments in here if I wanted to make it super round. I'm gonna leave it as it is so that I don't break these. And then there's just really, the other cool thing about this was the shaders that it added. So we can go in here and change, for instance, I wanted to change this to be something like red. I ended up adding different animations and components that animate this depending on the gameplay. So let me show you how, I think this is already still running. And then I have, okay, so it looks like everything is working, set up. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit play and I'll show you the results of what I show you on the video. So the cool thing is the game is running here. You can also go into the simulator. And yep, and basically I can test with controllers. And then everything is working, right? I'm not scoring because I'm I'm in the simulator. It's really hard to play it. But I can test. Oh, there we go. There we go. I got another score. Cool. I think that looks good. Okay. So I think that's everything as far as what I wanted to show you today. There's also the last part was the Unity AI. I think I ran out of time, but I recommend you to look at the Unity AI Assistant. It's going to basically work very similarly to what I show you on Cloud Code, except that it's going to be all built here into Unity. And we can do it pretty quick here. I can say, can you add a red cube and make a rotator script that provides a constant speed, something like that. But you can specify here what mode you want, if you wanted to ask it before it actually applies it, or basic agent mode, which is going to actually apply it. And then in this case, I have Cloud Code set up. So this is actually going to use Cloud Code when it tries to use AI. That's going to be the LLM. And then Unity, it's going to be the Unity LLM. I'm just going to use the Unity one in this case. So we can say, I can just hit enter, and it's going to try to prepare it. It's going to tell you the time here, and it's going to tell you what it's going to do. So let's see, I'm reasoning, creating a rotating script. It's really cool. I really like that it shows you the inline coding here, and it has the proper color coding. And then I would say this is like markdown type color coding. And so looks like the script is good to go. Now, what is it trying to do? Creating the implementation plan. And it's reasoning. And it's also, this is going to ask you if you want to approve these different actions. So you can say for the conversation, I don't want to have you to ask me again. So I'm going to say allow. Very similar to what I showed you in Cloud Code, except it's all here in this UI. So now it is reasoning. So one thing to know is it's going to be taking credits from my Unity Cloud. There's a specific spot there that Unity has for credits that are consumed through this. So if you wanted to create 3D models, sprites, actually conversational AI, that's going to go all towards that. And then let's see what it's doing, creating the scene object, creating a rotating cube. And let's see, it's actually creating a script to create a rotating cube and applying a material, which I thought was interesting. I thought it was going to do something internally and create a primitive. But yeah, it's doing all these, I guess it's an irun command, commands, inheriting from that interface. And then looks like, yep, it wants me to allow it. So I'm going to go ahead and allow it so you get the right cube. I mean, this is a very simple example, but you can do a lot more with it, right? And then you can see that it added a rotator script. It has a speed, and then it tells you all the changes that were made. So if I wanted to test this, I could literally just hit play, and then it's just going to have a cube that rotates at a specific speed. So we can see here if this is going to run. Oh, it looks like Unity is still thinking. It's because I have multiple instances of Unity. And there we go. We got the, and I don't know if this is happening on the update loop. On the update loop, looks like it is. So I can modify here as well. But yeah, that's honestly everything that I wanted to show you. I'll be making more videos about these and more advanced use cases on YouTube. But I think for now, we can go back to Q&A.
All right, so that was pretty cool, and I could relate to so many things that you said. Like for example, when you said it was really hard to work with shaders, and I could feel you because I'm exactly like you, where I would want to focus more on development with C sharp and not worry about how it looks visually. Now, if AI can do all the hard part of it, then that would be really cool. So now I'm going to take advantage of me being the host and ask you the first question. That that is when you use these AIs, especially for building shaders and things like that, do you feel it is optimized or do you feel it's not there yet? Because I feel the hardest thing to do right now in VR is to kind of simulate water or something like that. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's like optimized, to be honest.
Okay.
But you can use the other tools that I show you for performance optimization and kind of trace some of the bottlenecks. But when I started using the shader tools for what I just showed you on the ball glow,
Yeah.
you just try to figure it out from the web, from different resources, how to implement a shader. But it didn't really know much about shaders, at least for VR, until I start giving it more information about it. So yeah, definitely no. I think I could see us building a skill at some point that could
Mm.
provide more context to the agents.
Yeah. Cool. That's nice to know. And I think someone already said this on the chat that we saw that you were giving this talk on GDC, and I was really curious to know what it is, but now all of us know. So I'm going to go and try this out myself. And the first thing that I'm going to try is to see if I can simulate my hands not passing through a table. Like it should just get stuck there and
Okay.
not pass through. So let's see how that goes. All right. So moving on to the Q&A. Um, so I'm going to scroll all the way up. We had a couple of questions while you're giving the lecture. And yeah, here's the first one. How good is the AI when using MCP with Unity? I think you gave us a live demo of it. So,
Yeah. It's to be honest, it's when I was testing it for the MC for the demo for GDC, it was a very early version of that. And Unity right now, I don't want to speak too much from Unity, but from my experience, a lot of these packages are pre-packages, so they're pre-release versions. So I think right now I recommend using it as a playground because a lot of it's in my and also making sure that you're conscious about the usage. So a lot of these things like the demo that I built for GDC costs I think around $60 is what it costs when I look at the API because I was using an API key and also that adds more cost to it. So just keep that in mind. How good it is, it's getting better. Like I've been constantly looking at like all their pre packages and every version that gets released, they're working on it. I would say every week I see a new version and they have a lot of different features at it. So 2 weeks ago it was pretty bad. I would say 3 weeks ago was pretty bad. It's getting way better to a point that I'm feeling a lot more comfortable using it. But as you guys can saw on the VR side, there's a lot of things that I think we need to work on, and specifically like a grabbable should be as easy as just specifying that an issue. It normally adds it, but looks like in this case I might have provided a different prompt. But it's getting better. Yep.
yeah, I think this also answers the next question that we had, like some words around tokens and cost. And as you mentioned already, and one second. So
Yeah,
does it
I
work?
think with I was gonna
Yeah,
say
go.
to add to the cost, if you can do auth, I would recommend you to do that as much as you can, especially because when you start doing API, I think the API calls. I've been seeing some things on Twitter where the cost is astronomical. If you
Mhm.
do the API key versus the auth or paying something like the max or the pro plan, I think will be best. So yeah, just use it as a playground. Look at the analytics on the portal, on the cloud code portal. Just make sure that I don't know. I didn't see anywhere where like it was an astronomical cost. I saw it where it was like $2 or $3, nothing super crazy. So I would still watch it just to make sure.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw one post on Reddit that someone went bankrupt, so we don't want that to happen.
We don't want like Dilmer told me to use it, so now I went back.
Yeah. So, can you create assets like audio files?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Unity AI components specifically, they have ways to create SFX and then music. So in my case, I ended up downloading. I have a license, and that's because I was going to present, and I didn't want to use anything that could actually raise a licensing flag. But yeah, you can use the R audio generation also built into the Unity AI offering. So we'll look into that.
Yeah. So, the demo that you gave us right now was CoPlay, right? Have you used Cursor before? Before this, have you tried Cursor? Because we have a question regarding whether Cursor was better or CoPlay.
I have no use. Are we talking about Cursor as the IDE or Cursor as
Yeah,
an MCP?
I
Okay,
think as an I think Cursor as an
okay,
IDE to write script. That's what I used it for back then.
okay. Yeah, so just maybe I need to step back a little bit. So Cursor as an IDE, yes, I've used it. They have their own set of tools where you can generate, like using it as a co-pilot and generate code. And so CoPlay, it's like more of in my understanding, is more of an MCP. So it's basically the bridge between. So cursor sits right here, VS Code will sit right here, writer will sit right here. Then you have CoPlay, which sits in the middle. It's basically the bridge, and he knows it's the MCP. He knows how to communicate with how to create game objects, how to get information from the hierarchy, and then we have the extensions from Meta, which is basically next to CoPlay, that extends some of the functionality that CoPlay provides. So if you're thinking about, so CoPlay sits right here. If you wanted to use Unity AI offering, that will actually sit right here as well. Except that they
Yeah.
also have the chat feature. So it's I think their offering it's more robust because they also have the integrated
Mhm.
chat feature, which Cursor also has. So yeah, no, that's a pretty good question.
Yeah. So was there something that surprised you positively or saved you a good amount of time while you were building this?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Last, like I say, last year, I was getting ready for to do a GDC talk, and I think I was working months into. I started working on a prototype for the booth, and at the time we wanted to do co-location. We wanted to do. It was a mixed reality drawing application where multiple people could join and they could draw with you and basically come up with different ideas. So that took, I think, about 3 weeks, but I started thinking about it way before then and meeting with different people. So this time around, honestly, when I started working on this project, nothing was working. I downloaded the MCP, I downloaded the tools, everything was like not working. And I think like that's the takeaway from, I'm not saying that things are not going to work, but a lot of the technology is moving really, really fast. So I would always treat this as a playground, see what areas it can help you with. But the thing that surprised me was I like we talked about shaders, right? Like I'm not interested in learning how to create shaders. That's not really what I'm like what I want to learn more of. So could I create a cool game with my knowledge and then add the polishing that comes in when you have advanced shaders created? I didn't have to go to the asset store and try to find shader. I didn't need to hire somebody in Fiverr to create a shit. I could do it all on my own and basically give a reference images. That to me was like mind blowing because it made the game look a lot better than than I started with.
Yeah, it can surprise you in different ways.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll take a couple more questions. I've been connecting Unity MCP with other MCP servers. Any good use case you have found? Miro flowcharts with Unity is extremely powerful.
Oh, interesting. I've been connecting to Unity NCP, any Unity NCP to other NCP servers. Any good cases you have found? Miro. I'm not familiar with Miro flowcharts. Uh, are you familiar with that,
No, me neither.
Astray?
No, no, I have not tried Miro flowcharts, but I think I would use it like since I'm mainly doing prototypes and trying out different stuff. For me, the use case is just try out different prototypes, see what works, what does not, and let people know about it. So I think that's what
Yeah,
I can.
the thing that I'm excited about is like the Unity MCPs to other MCP servers is like being able to build your own MCP extensions.
Mhm.
Because like think about it, like if you have a studio and then you have basically a group of people that are creating editor tools and they have their own libraries, their own packages, like starting to build extensions where the Unity MCP can actually be extended to. That's what I see value. I'm sure there are other MCP servers that are super valuable, but yeah, I personally haven't yet.
Yeah. All right. We have one more question, which is much more technical. Without high API overload, are there specific open source frameworks like QAI, AutoGen, or LangGraph you'd recommend that pair well with free or self-hosted models for Quest design?
For Quest design. Yeah, I have not used any local or self-hosted models yet. Uh,
I think
yeah,
it's also
no.
difficult to host them, right? You need to have like a lot of GPU power
Mhm.
and a lot of RAM to host your own models to be able to generate all this stuff. So, and given the fact that right now getting a GPU itself is expensive, I think the only way right now would be to depend on the cloud-based API calls, which is kind of unfortunate, I would say.
Yeah, I have a pretty good friend who is like super into like running local models. So he bought a very expensive Mac Mini, and I'm
Okay.
sure many of you have seen that and done that. And I don't remember exactly what he's using, but he's running local models for more simple tasks or repetitive tasks, so that he doesn't really go to the cloud. But yeah, not too familiar with m- some of those different workflows.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, locally you can run simple models like body pose detection and these kind of things. But you and I don't have too much information of for design, especially. All right, so we have one last question, which is, what do you think will be added or improved in the next year? I think,
Yeah, it's crazy the amount. I mean, from the Meta side, I see it every day. Like I see developers at Meta just adding more and more skills. So there is a repo that I recommend looking at, which is the code agents, or I'll drop it in the description below so you guys can see what it is. But it has a variety of skills. That's what I show you in one of the initial slides. So I would think that we're gonna see a lot more agentic tools, more tools that you can use through CLI. There's the HCDB that I just show you. There's also Immersive debugger with AI being added. I also heard that we have more features being added to Runtime Optimizer that also has an agentic workflow. So I show you what Unity has. So we're also working on that with the optimization tools that we're providing to VR developers this year. I don't know when that's going to happen, but that is currently in the work. But yeah, there's a lot of work behind the scenes right now, and we're listening to what the industry is doing. I'm using AI tools for everything today, which
yeah.
is kind of crazy, even for presentations, which is it's just yeah.
True. I would agree as well. All right, so I think we'll wrap it up, and yeah, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Dilma, for taking all your time and showing this up. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go back after this and try it myself, and I'm gonna share it with all of you as well. And yeah, thank you for joining in. I know it's morning for some, it's midnight for some others, so really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next time, which is tomorrow. And bye bye until then.
Thank you, everyone.